It's not about win or lose. It's about win or learn. It's about becoming the man you were made to be. You're listening to Undefeated Men.
Spartans! What is your profession?
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good whatever, Undefeated Men. I'm Cal, here with Arden. We're super excited to bring you guys a special podcast this week on Health is Honor. Why you can't lead if you're sick, weak, or burned out. This is a topic that's very relevant to today, guys. Really excited topic for me. When Arden proposed this subject matter, he sent me a series of ones, and I'm telling you, health is honor. I can't say it more clearly than that, guys. You want to be an honorable man, you got to look after your health. Otherwise, again, you're dishonoring the vessel that the Lord has given us. Arden.
Yeah, no, I was just
what does this say to you?
Well, I was going to, I'm going to get to that. I was just want to say it's nice to be back on the bandwagon, first of all, Cal, because we've been off because we built a nice little bank of podcasts, and then he went to New Zealand. We've been very busy on a lot of different fronts. So it's nice to get back to the bandwagon, hanging out with Cal, doing podcasts. So I'm enjoying this, and I'm sure it'll just get better. Man, this speaks a lot. It's really hits home with me, and it's one of those things that, I know that I'm not where I need to be yet. And if you're a listener, whether you are not at, you could be at better health. We all could be. It's a lifelong journey. It's never like I'm just there. I'm here, and I'm not going to do anything else because it's a perishable skill. So we got to keep on working hard at being active and fit for our family and for what we're called to do as godly men. Mm-hmm. But all that to say is I'm not coming from a place of like I'm here, I did it right. You guys you're just lazy bums if you're overweight. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you are at all a leader right now and you're overweight, think about how much better you could be being fit, active, you're energetic, you have the capacity to lead. Like I told my mom, I was at one point, I feel like now that I'm like on the other side of cancer, and I wasn't on the fat side, but I was on the unhealthy side, and I pushed myself, but right now I feel like 3 times me. I'm 3 times the amount of me that I was before, and it feels good. It feels real good.
That's right. We were, just before we were starting today, we were talking about a good friend of ours, Ben Stewart, so shout out for Ben Stewart. He's a good friend to both Arden and I, and we've worked with him for the last couple of years. Arden's known him just a little bit longer than I have. I kind of ran into him at a conference years ago, so I know him from that conference. But he was up on the stage. He's actually a musician and a singer and a pastor and does just all kinds of things. And he's a business consultant, so he's my kind of guy. And he's also former Army, and he had done about roughly 8 years in the military before he got out, or 6. I'm sorry, Ben, if I'm getting the dates exact. I'm not getting them exactly right. Not my intent, but he did a couple of tours in the military. Then he got out, and tried his hand at many different things, and became a pastor, and hither and thither. There
Very
he
gifted
went.
man.
Very gifted man.
Yes.
But during that time, he let himself get quite overweight, and he was 100 plus more than he wanted to be. 100 plus pounds more than he wanted to be. And as he started to make a little more money, he was doing a little better for himself. He said, "You know what? This stuff's too important to me. I have got to get myself back in shape. I am just lagging at the end of conferences, lagging at the end of my days, not giving my family the best me. I get home and I'm so worn out, and I'm just, I'm dragging on Saturdays and Sundays." And so he said, "I'm going to get a personal trainer." He gets a personal trainer, and he starts getting after it, gets a dietitian, gets his diet, contracted back in. And anyway, over the next roughly year, he dropped 80% of that weight, and was totally different. And he became, and like Arden was saying, he became 3 times the man he used to be. In the right way. Yeah, he was much smaller, but he was just his energy, his passion, his fire for living and doing life was so much more.
On the deep side, yes, 100%. But even on the surface level, like me from the outside looking in, I'm like, man, this guy kind of has it all. He has God in the right priority as like the major priority of his life, family second, and those are his priorities. And then also his health and health and fitness, right? And then all the things like he's doing well financially in business because he's dialed. He's dialed in. He has his right priorities, and he has his routine that he sticks to religiously. And that makes me like look up to him like, man, that is a guy I want to be like. Yeah. That is a guy I want to be like. And I went there. I was blessed enough to go visit him for just a couple days, and I was like blown away just by the man and the leader he is. I'm like, that's the leader I want to be. So that's what this podcast is about. If you're one to be a leader and you're not in peak physical health, I encourage you to go there because I think that you could be a better leader. I know you can when you get to your peak physical health.
Yeah, and I always like to say too, Arden, again, as we know, right, he's more high passion, I'm more low passion. We're both passionate. And when I say high and low, here's the difference. He's saying peak physical. I'm saying no, good physical.
Yeah.
So peak is a short period of time, and you're in short little peaks. So, I don't aim for peak physical. I aim for good physical, but I make that standard very high for me. And I encourage you to make that standard very high for yourself. Mm-hmm. What is that ideal weight range you need to be in? Yeah. Just be, within plus or minus 5 pounds or whatever that ideal weight is for you. And that should be defined by your muscle mass, and it should be the muscle mass that you think is appropriate for you and your lifestyle and the way that you need to live your life. Some of you, you would look at yourself and say, I'm not overweight. I might look at myself and say, I'm overweight. It's individual. Mm-hmm. So you go by your individual goals and what your life is. If you're a carpenter or someone else with a very active job, I think roofers, I know a lot of tile guys, stuff like this. So many of you that are out there literally every day moving heavy things and working hard physically, you probably need a lot less physical training. So we're not like talking, it's not all about physical training because you're developing muscles in your everyday work. I don't develop a lot of muscle, stamping things and, producing documents and writing emails and being on conference calls. I'm not getting much muscle. So I don't know about you guys. I don't have that kind of activity. So I need to work that activity into my life. And this is all tied for us in Undefeated Men for that foundational pillar that a good man is physically, mentally, and spiritually fit. Mm-hmm. And today was, why can't you lead if you're sick, weak, or burned out? So our folks of using this word peak, getting a peak or a good physical condition, is because you are not going to be the leader that you could be if you had just been in shape.
I'll kind of tell you a little bit of context of why I thought I wanted to do a podcast with you on this subject matter, Cal, is I was talking to a pastor, and I had a young man with me that I've been kind of coaching along, and this young man was like, after the pastor went, and the pastor is he's not a bad guy, he's a good guy, but very overweight. And the young guy didn't really wasn't mature enough to listen to him. And on the one end, he was like, if he was like a little fitter, I'd listen to him, because he was talking about grit and stuff like that. And he was like, I just don't know if he has the, I don't know if he can talk about that subject when he's really, really overweight. And I was like, well, I think he has a lot of great points and he's a good guy. But I do agree. I think he could have a lot more influence and impact if he was, because he was passionate about the subject, about grit and determination. But on one side of his life, it was there. No evidence of that was there. Mm-hmm. And that's sad to say. When on the other side, he was very spiritually fit. But there's no evidence of that there. And he was a great guy. And so was the young guy that I was encouraging. But think about how much more impact he would have if he was physically fit. I'm not saying put that in the idol of your in your life and hey, you have to do this above God. That is by any means nowhere anywhere near your priority list of God, family. But it needs to be a major priority because you could have a lot more impact. And not just that. That's on the surface level of how people perceive you. But then it's the other side of energy and having the capability of influence and encouraging, because you have the energy to do so.
Yeah, for sure. I think so many times, using that example of a man trying to counsel a younger man, but he himself is not physically fit, even though he wasn't talking about physical fitness, he was just talking about grit and determination. Yeah. That makes you question.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that this pastor,
No,
didn't
yeah.
have grit and determination. I bet you he had tremendous grit and determination. Yeah, truckloads of the stuff.
He just needs to learn to apply it into the physical side.
Yeah, but he'd only applied it in a portion, which that's why I'm just saying. It's totally okay if you just say, hey, guys, listen, actually, I don't think that physical side is very important. I'm just going to focus on dialing in the spiritual side for me, or the mental side, or the relational side, or some other side. That's no problem. Because, again, we've talked about the different aspects of fitness here at Undefeated Men, because it's not just physical, it's not just mental, it's not just spiritual, it's relational. Okay, there's a high part of that relational aspect that's so important. So many guys, they might be physically fit, they might be mentally fit, and they might be spiritually fit, but they actually relationally,
oh, terrible.
they stink.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah. I mean, they're in horrible shape. They're like a 500-pound guy
Yeah.
when it comes to relationship, because they're carrying around all this baggage, or they just don't do well, even though they're quite spiritually fit on other matters, because spiritually you should be good relationally. And that's actually one of the points that we're going to make today. We're going to talk to you a little bit about what the Bible has to say about physical fitness. A lot of people think it has nothing to do with it, but I'm going to start with, and we kind of wanted to call these a little bit of the segment of leadership, right? We say why you can't lead if you're sick, weak, or burned out, because the burden of leadership requires strength. Leadership demands energy, stamina, and mental clarity. All of the men that are listening to this right now that are fathers, especially those that are men who have even transcended into that grandfather state, like me. So I've got grandchildren. I know that leading my family demanded energy and stamina and mental clarity throughout the years, and that I was doing better at different portions of those at different times.
Yeah.
Sometimes I was doing great, sometimes I wasn't doing so great, but regardless, this is a marathon you're running in life. Unless for whatever reason, you were taken early, you die when you're young, which is not the law of averages here in the United States. You're going to live to a reasonably ripe old age, and we all know the stories of this person who was taken much too young, and those are sad stories, and they happen. But more than likely, you're going to live to a decent old age. On average, here in the United States, as a man, you're going to live into your 70s.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a long time to live. That's going to take some stamina. Okay, and if we want to do it well, we want to have energy during that time. And we want to have mental clarity so we're making good decisions. So when you just think about the leadership requiring the strength, it's because you're not just leading tasks, you're leading people. These people need your consistency, your presence, your sharpness. So if I'm kind of sometimes sharp, sometimes not sharp, depending on what I just ate, depending on, oh man, is it 5 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock in the evening, 9 o'clock in the evening? How sharp am I? Okay. My presence in their life, in other people's lives, am I there? Do I have the stamina? Again, am I still mentally clear? Do I have the energy to deal with the problem at 9 p.m. that my 13-year-old just created when he, cut himself on something, and I got to take him to the emergency room, and I got a really early day in the office the next day? Do I have the stamina to step up? Hey, this is unknown and unknowable. Yeah. Am I prepared for that? Am I ready? Or am I just like, oh man, this is going to wreck my tomorrow too?
Oh, I love that. And like, do you have, I was writing out, I was telling you before the podcast, I was writing out this week's newsletter, which is on the same subject. And I wrote out like, are you able to carry the weight of the world, or are you going to be the weight? Are you going to be the burden? Because you aren't physically and mentally fit, that you end up, like you said, like by the end of the day, you can't handle anything else. And then you end up exploding at your wife or your child, because you've just let everything build up, and you are drained, and you end up blowing up and blowing a fuse. And that's happened. I mean, I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that 100%. But I'm saying that I want to average out where I'm not doing that. And the majority of the time, I'm not doing that, right? Yeah. I'm not doing that because that's not right. I don't want to treat my wife like that. So I like that. Like, are you going to carry the weight that we're meant to carry as men? Are you going to be the rock where the waves of life can just crash upon you and you go to God and he helps you with that? Or are you going to be the weight? Are you going to be the weight, the dead weight on your family? Yeah. And that's kind of a tough way to look at that, but No,
but it's a truthful way to look at it. That's the thing, is we're fooling ourselves. That's the thing, is we're great liars. And sometimes people say, what? I never lie. I go, I think you do. I bet you lie to yourself often. The thing is, we got to face ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, what am I being untruthful to myself? You say, hey, I'm looking pretty good, old boys. You slap 10 or 20 extra pounds. Well, you weren't very honest right there.
Yeah.
If you look in yourself and you go, you know what? I got some work to do. And maybe that 10 or 20 pounds wasn't actually physical weight on you. Maybe that 10 or 20 pounds was, you know what? I didn't handle that thing with my son very well.
Well, and you've encouraged me this in this way before, and I think that this can be applied to all areas of life as a man. You said, hey, Arden, don't let your faults, your area that you might be failing at, even if it might be small and you have so many good qualities, don't let that part be a tripping hazard for yourself or other people.
That's right.
So that encouraged me. There's, I'm not the greatest at organization, right?
Yeah.
But I was at one point, and still I'm getting better at it. But I was at one point, it was a huge tripping hazard for not just myself, but other people I worked with, and that was like a hot button. Like it was not a great thing. So like that can be applied to like in your relationship, your wife, your kids, your people that you go to church with, your brothers and sisters, parents. Are you going to be getting stronger at your weak points and making sure they're not a tripping hazard for you, your fellow brothers or sisters in Christ, or the people you live with? Or are you going to not only get better at that, you're going to get better at it. Maybe you might not be the best at it, but you're going to get better at that, and then make sure it's not a tripping hazard, and you're going to get better at your strong suits.
Yes, that's right.
We
don't want our weak. That's the thing about that weakness, right? So it reminds me of a story of, we were doing this race, and it was all the way around the island of Oahu. So we were running around it's called the perimeter relay. I don't think they run it anymore, but this was back in the early 2000s, and basically you have a baton pass between team members, and you have, depending on what team you're on, if it's a co-ed team or if it's all guy team or all girl team, you can have anywhere 5 or 6 runners, and everybody does a leg, and then you pass to the next person, you do a leg, because it's 140 some miles, so you can't run the whole thing yourself. Well, the relay it's a relay. It's not one of those ultra marathons, and so you end up running 24, 25, 26 miles, somewhere in there, depending on your team. And I remember that on our team, we had a shot at winning. We specifically went out. Ours was a co-ed team, so we had 4 guys and 2 girls, and or two young women, and they were great runners. And that was the thing, is we had a shot because our female runners were really good. So we had a shot at winning this thing. And unfortunately, one of the guys on our team he was probably the second fastest guy, but he had gone through some things leading up to the weeks before the race, where he just hadn't trained like he normally did, and he was just going to gut it out, or at least thought he was, right? So he came to the race unprepared, not ready. He wasn't ready, so he came in there and got a side ache on his first leg, and he had a particularly brutal 6 miles, or whatever it was, and it just horrible. He ended up like walking, and then he said, no, that's it. I'm going to power through it. So he gets himself in there, power through. So we're getting behind. Everybody else is picking up the legs. And he does a second one, and he had something with his knee or something then, because again, he hadn't been running, and then he kind of overdid it on the end of his previous leg. So then he was kind of trying to make up for it too much. And so it kind of it didn't necessarily go downhill from there. I talked to him after that second one.
Best,
I just said, dude, you got to just scale it back. You got to just jog the other ones. Don't worry, just mail it in. I go, don't cause yourself tough to walk. Don't push yourself that hard. Ease up, because your body's just not ready for this, and you're going to completely kill all the time if you don't ease up. If you try and go that hard again because he still had 2 more legs to run. And like I said, he was faster than me. He was faster than me. I think I was either the 3rd or the 4th fastest guy.
The chance to win was leading on the fact that and he should have trained for that, and that's kind of what goes to one of my points is like I can't remember who said this. You've definitely said it to me before, 100%. But most people, and including myself, I used to think this. I will just rise to the occasion, but you never rise to the occasion. You fall down to the level of preparedness that you were prepared.
I love it.
And
it could be a direct quote from me. You never rise to the occasion. You fall to your training. Whatever your training standard is you're trained to, you fall down to that level. You are not going to do any better than that level, unless again it's a simple thing and you can just have a great day and do more than you would on a normal day. But
exactly, I mean, there's a level that you can rise to. You can rise in a mental ability to push through, but when it comes to like the basic mechanics, you never rise.
Yeah, if you train for a marathon and you say, hey, I'm gonna run in 4 hours, or that's my goal and I want to run it for 4 hours, but you train to not even be able to run a marathon. On that day, you might actually run a marathon.
Yeah.
You might run the whole thing and say, that's it. I'm not going to walk. And you are grit and determination like we were just talking about. You do that whole marathon, but you get it done in 6 hours. You're not going to hit that 4 hour mark unless you are you're training. And if you have 3 hours, you definitely got to train. And if you're like a competitive marathoner, you absolutely train. So we want to get a little bit away from the physical stuff to just talk about strength, though. When you're physically weak, you can't model resilience, or like this pastor had the trouble with, or grit, because he appeared that physical week. You say grit. There is amount of grit in study. There's amount of grit in like preparing myself, saying memorizing a large portion of scripture or a book or a play or something like this. I think of actors. Some of these actors have quite long lines, or a solo or soliloquy.
Remember, it takes work.
There's a lot of work to memorize all those words and then to carry them off flawlessly and to do the right facial gestures and stuff at the right time. That's work. They develop some grit, and they probably have at least some level of physical training in order to be able to do that. Singers train for that all the time.
They got to train their vocal cords, how to tones, how to hit the right notes at the exact times. Otherwise, if they didn't train, they'd go to sing at the concert and they're like I would be if I just went and like tried to belt it out. No training.
Yeah, I would.
There's obviously natural gift as to some things, but
oh man, I want to remember which singer it is. It is such a great story. I am sorry. She was a very famous, or still is really famous singer, Celine Dion. Yeah. Celine Dion. And she literally, on the day that she's going to be on a concert and sing, she will not even talk above a whisper. She won't even talk. Yeah. No, she won't even whisper. Yeah, she doesn't even whisper. She won't talk at all. Or recording. I'm sorry for doing recording. My bad. I'm sorry. It's for like a recording, which she's going to, because she wants her recording to be of such high quality. And someone was like interviewing her once during that stuff, and she literally wrote on a napkin and was just saying, hey, if you do it once, then, if you let yourself do it once, then you've broken that ice. Okay, suggesting that you were going to do it again, right? So she basically just wrote that on a napkin and said it to him and wouldn't speak. And then, of course, she had a recording session, whatever, did her stuff, and her voice was, that's exceptional. And then, she goes back to reading her stuff. But the discipline, the grit required for her to do that, again, that's a physical strength she was showing to restrain herself. So strength can even be, or that physical aspect, the mental part of it can also work itself out. And so when you're emotionally burned out, you become reactive and not responsive. And I feel like my friend on that race, again, he kind of got emotionally burned out a little bit because that's what had happened to him in the weeks leading up to this race. And he became he was trying to react to the emotional decisions he'd made before, and therefore, his body wasn't responding well. Even physically, that affected him. But we know that when we do things and we get emotionally burned out, with our children, I think you brought up earlier, right? You snap at your wife, you snap at your daughter, you snap at your son, you do whatever because we are emotionally burned out. So we tend to shut down emotionally, right? Or we tend to isolate ourselves and get away from people because we become emotionally burned out. This is the part of that physical. You say, what is physical fitness? Help us with. It gives you the energy and stamina to not get emotionally burned out. You'll be surprised, guys, if you go out there and get yourself in shape, how much more you can emotionally handle. Why? Because your body can go through and handle and recover from the cortisol and whatnot that your body that comes out during that stressful emotional time. Those that aren't in good fitness, we watched them happen to them all the time in the Marine Corps, where they just weren't in that good a shape. They would also seem like they're being weak mentally or emotionally. They weren't actually being weak. They just weren't in good shape. And so their ability to stand up to the tests that were going on, that were testing their mettle and their strength, their physical weakness, they were just so drained. They just couldn't do it anymore. And then that led to your spiritual tank being an empty, right? So you're physically weak, so you don't have this resilience, this grit. You're just tired. You become reactive, and you're not very responsive. You just kind of shut down. And it's because you're losing your direction and purpose. You stop leading with conviction because you don't have the energy, because your spiritual tank is empty, because you don't have the energy to keep powering that spiritual tank through.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I love that because, are you going to be the good example or the bad example?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of example? We all have the ability to be an example, and it's up to us to and especially as if you're a father, then that's an incredible burden to carry, and it's a good one because you have but it's also a heavy one, and then on top of that, if you're like a leader, a pastor, that's even more so. It's very important, just as important in God's eyes, but you're leading people. So I was just, going back to even Ben Stewart. He, I noticed we went out to lunch with him, and there were young guys there that he knew that he was pouring into just by being there, but they look up to him on so many different fronts. And I know probably a couple dozen that do the same, because not only they're like, man, he's been pouring in, he's been giving personal time. That's great. That's awesome. But it's the fact that he's living in such discipline, and you can see it.
Yeah.
You can see it. And that's like, that is inspiring.
Yeah.
People want that. I'm inspired by you, Uncle Cal, because you do the same thing. I'm like, man, I want to be in my 50s. I want to be, I want to be strong. I want to be able to. You have over 10 kids, right?
12.
Yeah. Sorry, my bad. I miscount my cousins sometimes. But you have a lot of kids, and you still have you have two with Down syndrome, and you have the energy. I'm like, I don't know how he does it sometimes. I don't
know how I would have got through all these years if I wasn't at least some semblance of physically fit. And again, that physical fit helped my spiritual fitness, helped my mental fitness. And so I would say, hey, I also wouldn't be physically fit if I wasn't spiritually fit and mentally fit. So I just want to work that back the other way. And I always love to add relationally fit in there too. Yeah. My relational fitness to help my spiritual fitness, to help my mental fitness, to help my physical fitness. All those things, all this fitness stuff is all tied.
Yeah.
But being sick or broken down isn't just inconvenient. It dishonors the role you've been given to protect and provide, as Arden was saying. So remember that sick, that broken down, that weak, that burned out, it's not just that's inconvenient to you. You stop fooling yourself. Don't lie to yourself anymore, guys.
No.
Call yourself on your own baloney. Say, I'm not the leader that I could be. I need to do something.
We're not trying to make you feel bad, guys. We're not trying to lay on the guilt. Guilt is not what we're here for. We're trying to help convict you. So if you feel convicted, look at yourself inwardly. Like Cal, I've been convicted personally. That's why I'm trying to live a life of pushing myself to grow personally, and so is Cal. We can't change. So many people, they want to change the world. So it's like, oh, I want to change the world, but it starts with you.
Yeah,
it starts with you. You got to change yourself. And I mean, I'll say this because Cal and I have talked about this in the past too. I used to be so against scheduling and different things because I felt like that took away my freedom.
Yeah. And creativity.
Yeah, and creativity.
Yeah, the freedom
but I've come to realize that discipline equals freedom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. And it's taken me years. And, these things, it's not something that you're going to get overnight, guys. It's taken me years, and I know that I have a long road, and that's the beautiful side. It's the long roads are the good ones, right? Yeah. It's a long road of learning ahead of me.
Yeah, enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
We're going to have, peaks and valleys. We're going to have dips. We're going to get it down into some muck. We're going to get dirty. We're going to get muddy. That's all right.
But
we're going to rise out of that.
Look inward, guys. Are you the man that your family deserves? Are you the leader that your church deserves? Are you the leader that your younger siblings want, that they need to see as a role model? I know so many guys have been great role models as older siblings, and I know so many guys that haven't been. And there's actually a big difference on how younger siblings turn out. I mean, parents do their jobs, and that's great, and they're major. But older siblings have a major influence, more than you'd think.
Yeah,
more than you'd think.
Yeah. So Jesse, my son Jesse, is here. So now, Jesse, you heard what he just said there. So it's your oldest brother Josiah's fault. That's all I heard. That's what I wrote down. That note is here. Can we get that on the blog?
Yeah.
Hopefully Josiah doesn't read it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm messing right there. But this is all great stuff that Arden's talking about. This is the part where gets us, to me, kind of like the second part of this is the leadership, that strength of character. We need to look at that through a biblical lens. We need to take a minute here and look at what the Bible has to say about leadership. not from the angle of position of leadership, but from the foundation of strength of character. Okay, so this is the strength of character. Because in the kingdom, leadership isn't about control or control over other people or what they're doing. It's actually about control over yourself. It's about servant-hearted responsibility backed by integrity and strength. Leadership starts with integrity. Proverbs 11:3 says, "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity." Okay, let me read that one again for you guys. The integrity of the upright guides them. So your integrity guides you, suggesting into truth, into righteousness, into good things. But the unfaithful, so those who don't have integrity, are destroyed by their duplicity. Oh, I have integrity. Oh, do you now? Okay, so look at yourself. Look at your own actions and say, hey, you know what? Sometimes I'm unfaithful. Okay, sometimes I have integrity. It's okay, guys. We are not saying we're perfect and I'm always in integrity 100%.
But we're meant to strive for it.
But we're meant to strive for it. And I'm looking to contend for it. I want to fight for it. I want to put the battle in to be a person who's known for integrity. And I'll call myself on my own integrity, in which Arden's heard me do it dozens of times. My son Jesse too. I mess up. I screw up. I screw up royally.
That's the first part of it. That's the first part of it. Knowing that, hey, I am a sinner. I am not the best man out there, right? I'm not fault free. No, knowing that you have fault, but being able to recognize it. Because if you don't know it, then you can't recognize it. Then you have zero room for growth.
Yeah,
zero room for growth. You can't see it.
Yeah,
and you're like the perfect person. You can't see it, but you're not the perfect person. But you think you are, and you have no intellectual honesty.
Sure. And, we're saying this from that Christian perspective. And for us, that's because when we say Christian, it's because it's based on Christ. He was the only good one. He was the perfect one. He was perfectly integrous or had perfect integrity. Okay. He was never unfaithful. He was always faithful and still is always faithful.
He passed every temptation with flying colors.
He was never duplicitous.
No.
He was never two-faced. What is two-faced? We say one thing and do something else. We say one thing and forget to do it. Yeah. We, that wasn't him. He didn't do those things. But we're not called to be him. We're not called to be perfection. So I always think of integrity isn't perfection. It's alignment. Okay. With your words, actions, and private life, we want them to match the goals or the intent of what we're doing so that people will trust us. So if your integrity, we just want to get our integrity up in those 90s, whatever, 80s, 90s, high 90s, you want to get them in there. You're not going to be perfect. You're not be perfect in that area. We can't be perfect, but that's okay. We can just call ourselves on our mistakes, say, hey, whoops, actually that was me. I'm the one that just spilled that.
It's the small wins. It's the averaging out. Are you averaging calling yourself on your own crap, so to speak? Are you calling yourself on your the stuff that you're doing wrong? And it's just small wins. Like I've written down this quote: small wins build momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence leads to consistency, and consistency, and I added on this part, help men become undefeated.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's saying you can't lead anyone if you're not first leading yourself. Okay. With the consistency. Well, I forgot the other ones. Read that again because it was so good.
Yeah, small wins build momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence leads to consistency, and consistent men become undefeated.
I love it. That's because that's based in the truthfulness and accountability of calling yourself, the truthfulness to say, hey, I'm not doing this right. I need to improve this. The accountability, I'm accountable to the intent, the things that I'm saying. Don't make someone else hold you accountable. And it's fine to have accountability partners. We are not saying anything about that. Find other guys to help you keep you accountable. You definitely have to.
You got to be able to. You got to learn to do it by yourself too.
Yep, you got to be accountable to yourself too. You got to say, you know what, that was baloney.
Yeah,
I just made that like I'm all that and I'm not.
Yeah,
or I made that sound like more than it was. Hey, just take the time right there and say, hey, or no, I'm sorry, I made that sound like that was more than it was. Actually, I only played this part in it. I go, but I learned something from that, or whatever. We're not looking to make this more difficult than it is, guys. What we are saying is it starts small, and we're going to get into these takeaways here, but we're going to start small and with little things, and we're going to string them together to be more. So truth, strength. I'm going to let actually Arden read the second one here. I got it on another one. So you go ahead and just read that one, that second one there.
Yeah.
The other verse.
Yep. Psalm 112 verses 6 and 7. Surely the righteous will never be shaken. They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast and trusting the Lord.
Yeah, and this is about strength of character, right? We want to be unshaken, even when life shakes you around. Okay? Surely the righteous will never be shaken.
Mm.
Okay? So when life gets, those violent shakes of all these things seem to come, it's like, wham, you get hit from this, wham, you get hit from that. I always think of Job in the Bible, right? He gets the bad news that one thing happens. And then while he was still receiving that bad news, here comes another one of his servants. Here's some more bad news, Job. And he's like, wow, well, he was still just trying to comprehend that news. Here comes his third servant, giving him more bad news.
Yeah.
He hadn't even processed the first one, and he had the third one telling him about all this calamity coming in there. So I think we can all talk about it, right? You're just like, go to call your wife. The engine just blew, and you call her, and she said, the air conditioner just went out at home.
Yeah.
Oh, man, okay. To call your buddy who's your air conditioner repairman or your engine repairman said, oh, yeah, I'd come get you, but my rear axle just fell out. It's just like calamity upon calamity upon calamity. I'm sure everyone has some stories where they had these sort of things happen in their life.
Yeah.
And you're just like, you just want to look up at heaven and go, really, Lord?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, really. What are you going to do, my friend?
Yeah.
That's what he's saying, and he's not doing that in a challenging way that I just said. He's doing it in a real kind way.
They're building up way. He's God is our biggest cheerleader.
Yeah,
he's the one calling. He's like rooting for us, and I like the way Jordan Peterson said this. Somebody asked him like, "Hey, if God's so good, why does he allow certain things to happen?"
Yeah,
and he looks at him and says, "It's not so wrong if the God that is allowing it to happen knows that you're going to win, knows that he's going to give you the strength to win, that he's not going to break you. He wants you to learn." And that resembles with me so much just my whole cancer battle, and that walk, my wife and I had, just the infertility and everything that kind of came along with that, in the years, 7 long years of battling. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm actually gotten to the point, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad, because
what literally did not kill you made you stronger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so true. And we look at this, especially in this Western society, we look at everything that we're going through. We want, immediate gratification.
Yeah.
So that's why we're getting unhealthy, immediate gratification. And then we also get upset. And I have to learn myself to not get upset when there's a goal that I'm driving towards that is not happening right now. Even with the business we're building, I want it to be right where the end goal,
my
right
goal
now.
is.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's meant to be that battle. I wouldn't learn anything. It wouldn't be good for me if it just came out of thin air and like, okay, awesome, we're doing well. No, it wouldn't be good. I wouldn't learn anything. No business skill sets, nothing. Sorry guys, 1 minute. My daughter just popped in here.
Hello.
Going back to that, what I was saying is, I wouldn't have learned anything if I didn't go through what I went through.
Yeah.
If we automatically got our goals, handed to us, we wouldn't learn anything. We wouldn't be better. We wouldn't grow. And that's what this is about. Like pushing ourselves, growing. The bad times are for our, benefit. I used to think that I did something bad, that I was getting punished for going through, because I was going through cancer. And then somebody was encouraging me like, no. This is God. God throws his greatest battles to his greatest warriors. And that resonated. I was like, man, it was encouraging. I didn't feel personally that and I still don't, I don't feel like I'm, God's greatest warrior. I don't think that of myself, but that was encouraging that God throws his greatest battles to his greatest warriors. The people that he knows that can get through it. Yeah. He gives it to. I'm like,
oh, I love saying that, because, we have the scripture, which we're not going to read, but, this patience that we're dealing, this perseverance. Okay, we're going to go through these tough things to develop us because the Lord cares for us, and to give us those challenges to his warriors. It would be pointless to find the poor person who's out there that is strung out on drugs, right, and has become so physically unfit because they're just going from the hit of whatever drug they happen to be slave to, that they're getting that hit from. It doesn't matter what one we name today, right? Heroin, meth, you name it, whatever. So they're strung out on something, and then come to him and say, I wouldn't come on them and say, hey, quick, here, hey, take my M4 here.
Yeah.
We got bad guys coming down the street here. Okay, I want you to direct your fire over here. I mean, no one would even think about that. You wouldn't hand a weapon to that person.
No.
Okay, so now I'm talking about a physical war-based thing that we don't want to be in that position, but I think we could all understand that. Why would the Lord hand some aspect of war, and that we're not called to necessarily fight that kind of war, or spiritual warfare, but to be ready for that war when that person's just not capable of rising to that occasion. I'm not going to say, here, take my M4, you take out those 4 guys over there, I'm going to go down the street and hold these guys off. Why would you trust that? That strung out poor person who's just, they're in terrible physical condition and strung out on drugs. The last thing you do is hand them a weapon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So are we that?
Yeah.
Is that what we've become? Have we become a druggie strung out on whatever, lack of
social media,
fitness? Yeah. Social media, is that diet? Is that I'm physically not ready? I'm not ready relationally, and I'm not ready spiritually. So I don't read my Bible or any other work that's going to be out there that's going to encourage me to be more and do more, increase by 1%. And there's heaps of great books out there if you're not Christians. But, am I ready relationally for my family relationships, marital relationship, work relationships? Am I terrible at all those things? I'm way overweight. I'm not, and so if you're getting down on yourself, right there, if I'm saying that, you're saying, oh man, he's talking to me and I suck. No, dude, you don't.
No.
If you don't think I haven't been down in the miry muck with you, I want you to know that I have. I've got my version. You've got yours. Arden has his.
Yeah.
We've all got our own versions, and I want to encourage each one of you that you can get out of the muck that you're in.
And Cal and I can't make you.
Yeah, I can't make you. You got to decide you want to.
It's your choice to think about, like, are you going to let your physical health be a liability or a weapon?
Yeah.
Because it can be a weapon. It can be, and you might not. Some people, they actually at their depths of despair or their lowest point of health, and they might think, I don't see how being 100 pounds less could help my life really. I mean, maybe my ankles would hurt less, my knees would hurt less, but like you'd be surprised.
Oh, I love it, and actually it dovetails right into my next point that I'm going to say. Okay, so follow this one for a second. So that person that thinks, I don't need to lose that 100 pounds, even though it might make my ankles hurt less and my knees hurt less and all these other things. And I'm going to tell you why, especially if you're a Christian, this should be happening. And this is because servant leadership is godly leadership. Mark 10:43-45 says, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Now, I skipped a little bit to get to the last bit there, but for Jesus didn't come to be served, but to serve. So if you start and you're at the bottom of the barrel, whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually, relationally, or whatever, if you start focusing on, okay, I need to serve some others, I need to lead by serving. You say, what? Lead by serving? Don't you lead by leading? No, lead by serving. So I'm going to be that example. I'm going to serve others. So when you start focusing on serving others and say your ankles and knees are bothering you, and you decide that you're going to do some job where you're serving others, and those ankles and knees are preventing you from doing that well, then you probably need to do something so that you can serve others better. And your family for sure needs you without sore ankles and knees.
100%. And then also this right here, you just touched on something major, guys. Right there, even set aside what we were talking about, how incredible being you have to be fit to be a really good leader. Set aside that even. If you are being active, and then on top of that, you're helping others, you're serving, and then on top of that, you're reading God's word, that right there is like a killer. It is like a lava sword, straight up lightsaber to depression.
Yes.
Helping other people, being physically active, reading God's word. Yeah. Those three things right there is a killer blow. It's dead. Yeah. It's gone.
Yeah, you'll find yourself not suffering from the things like depression. And there's physical reasons why, and there's mental reasons why, and there's spiritual reasons why. That's the thing, they dovetail together. And by the way, once you get out of that depressive state, you also improve your relationships.
Yes.
So you get at the fitness and all these things.
No, not like you're trying to be depressed. Nobody wants to be depressed, but you're no longer looking so deep inward that you're microscoping on all your little problems. And I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just saying, I at one point when I was taking a lot of different drugs during the cancer treatment, I was medically depressed from all the different things. And I know what I felt, and I know, it's similar to a lot of forms of depression out there. And it was like you're just microscoping on like how bad you are, how bad life is, how bad this is, and you're like, what's the point of the future?
Yeah.
And I had, like, I will say, even with, I was still
those
on the
negative
same,
thoughts compound.
Yeah, and they did. The compound got worse and worse and worse. And once I had to dig deeper. I was reading my Bible still, but on a surface level, I did it deeper. I had to get more active and helping my wife more. We didn't have a baby at the time, but like that helped so much.
Oh, I totally agree. So when I've been at my worst of my worst, it was the very same thing. I kind of got depressed about these things, but then I thought, and I don't even remember if this was the scripture that I read, but it was either this or a similar one that where I thought, what I need to do is stop thinking about my own problems and start helping other people. So leading by example means sacrificing when you need and putting others' needs before your own ego. I always thought of that acronym JOY. Jesus first, others, then yourself. And
I love that. That's
Jesus
good.
is telling you to love your neighbor as yourself. He broke the whole law into two basic things, and we've talked about it before on the podcast, right? Love the Lord God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength, okay? And love your neighbor as yourself. Mm-hmm. So first we love God, and by loving God, we love others. So let me say that again. First we love God, and by loving God, we love others. So you don't just love God and ignore others. Mm-hmm. You love God by loving others. Mm-hmm. Because what did Jesus do? For Jesus so loved the world. And we say, for God gave his only begotten son, right? But for Jesus so loved the world that he gave his life that we might have the possibility of everlasting life. Mm-hmm. That's how much he loved us. He was the first example, and often called as the elder brother. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people use that language, or the first among many. Jesus led the way by showing us what needed to be done, which was being concerned for others. Yeah. So once you start taking your focus off yourself and just making on to others, the other things are going to start to follow. When I'm worried about, hey, am I supporting my wife right? Am I able to do these things with my daughters and my sons? I'm going to have to maintain some level of fitness. Mm-hmm. Again, in this, we're talking about physical, spiritual, mental, and relational health. I've got to get myself in shape.
Yeah. Well, and Jesus wasn't weak. He was probably very physically strong. And I've heard a couple theories from a couple, I guess, theologians or people who have dived a little deeper, and there some theories say that obviously he was the Son of God, so he had supernatural power, right? But his strength, being a carpenter for most of his life,
which mostly was mason work back then.
Yeah.
And wood and masonry.
Exactly. Yep. Probably had a very big, big part of him going through the beatings and the lashings with just getting his flesh torn apart. A massive part, a role in that, and that's just purely physical. Obviously, he was the Son of God, and he was incredible, and was to withstand so much pain. But I would say just his physical health probably had a massive role in that. That's just a couple of theories, but
yes. Yeah, it's amazing to think about that. And I think there's a couple of other scriptures that support that, just not just what Jesus went through and he did. And all the places they walked, of course, he and the disciples speak to a level of fitness in order to be able to walk the long distances that they walk. Mm-hmm. They walked all these places. And Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9:27, I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. Now, we can argue that keeping that body under control was controlling urges. I definitely agree with that aspect to it. But it also meant that his body wasn't keeping him back from being successful. And Paul also at that time would have had to walk so many places and been enough physically fit that he wasn't having to be carried by people on a litter, different places and all these different things. So Paul had a certain amount of at least physical discipline, keeping his body under control so that he wouldn't be disqualified from the things that he was trying to do. And he meant literally restraining himself from doing bad stuff with his body. We get that. But I'm saying that strong body also helps keep that calling strong and secure, his ability to preach to others. He needed to be fit to be able to get to all these locations and talk to all these different people. And remember, they had to sail with really crummy food, and sometimes he ate and sometimes he didn't. He had a lot and he had a little. Paul talks about that. It's amazing what they went through.
Oh, yeah.
And the second piece of this is, where Nehemiah says, this is Nehemiah in 6:3, I am doing a great work and I cannot come down. When Nehemiah said this is from Nehemiah 6:3, so go ahead and look at this. Remember what Nehemiah was doing. They were rebuilding the wall. And many of those people were rebuilding the wall. They literally had one hand on a spear and one hand stacking bricks, and scoping stuff like this because they were expecting attack and whatnot. So it's pretty incredible what they were doing. He was building a wall and he refused to be distracted by the threats or the games that were going on. When he said, I cannot come down, he just kept doing that physical thing of building this wall. And again, these were big old bricks.
Disciplined.
Yeah. A man who knows his mission doesn't flinch or descend into pettiness. He stays focused. He stays strong. So that was mentally strong, but physically he was doing hard work.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we lose this aspect because life is so changed here. 150 years ago, there weren't discussions about you need to stay physically fit.
No, they walked everywhere.
Yeah, people walked everywhere, rode horses, which was not easy. Or
core.
Yeah, he had core strength. I mean, even just bouncing along in a carriage. I mean, you got shaken. I mean, that was rebounding at a high level.
Yeah,
it was like crazy rebounding, bouncing off the wood planks as you go along. So people were just fit at another level that it's hard for us to even understand.
We take that for granted.
Yeah, take it for granted.
Yeah, I like to think of this. Lots of guys, and I know so many. And it's nothing wrong with saying it, especially because some of what you experienced might have been cool back in your day, right? But lots of guys like, back in my day, I could do this. Back in my day, I could do that. And I'm like, do you want to be one of those guys telling your kids or telling the people that you're leading back in my day, or do you want to be like, I'm living my day?
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
I'm living my day.
So we thought of I put this down as a takeaway here. So Undefeated Men, this is a takeaway from what we've talked about so far. The Bible is clear. Leadership isn't for the faint of heart. It's for like Nehemiah, okay, like Paul, like the Lord Jesus when we talked about him. Okay, servant leadership. He was an example of it. Jesus was one tough fella, tough guy. He went through. I just can't believe what he went through. And if you need to go out and watch a movie and remind yourself of how much it was, you just go ahead and watch one of the movies that are out there that talked about what Jesus went through on our behalf. Tough man.
I mean,
so this is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just talking about that. Just a slight little tangent. When they were filming The Passion of the Christ. The actor who was acting as Jesus, they had a piece of plywood on his back when they were doing the cat and nine tails, and one of those things came around totally accident, and hit him, and he fainted. Yeah, he was out. One little teeny cat metal hook thing. Yeah, or glass, whatever.
Yeah, and those were typically like 9 or something, or 9 to 14, or for some reason I feel like it was 9 was the number, but they had however many of them on that thing that they were whipping you with, meant to just dig out your flesh and cause infection, because they were just nasty. So leadership isn't for the faint of heart. It's for men who are spiritually grounded, physically capable, emotionally stable, and mentally sharp. The world doesn't need, like Arden was saying, louder men talking about how tough they were back in the day. It needs stronger men who are keeping themselves fit and ready today. Men of honor, men who build, protect, lead, and serve. And that's what we're here about at UM. And again, we're not saying that if you're like me in your 50s or someone who's older than me in their 60s or 70s, that you need to maintain the level of fitness you had when you were 25. Oh. We're saying you need to maintain a level of fitness that's appropriate to you and to your life to serve the people in your life.
I'm not trying to make you think that your legacy is not, you haven't had a huge impact. No, you've had it.
Me either.
Hopefully you've had an incredible impact, and I'm so happy for you, and I think that's incredible, and you've done God's work. But at the same time, why stop? Why think, I'm old now, I shouldn't do that? No. You can still have an impactful legacy, and maybe even tenfold Someone like, I want to be in my 70s and be like, I'm going to still preach the same thing in my 70s. I want to be that kind of man.
Yeah.
Like in my 70s, I want to be out there with the young guys, Lord willing, be out there with the young guys playing basketball or doing something. I might not be as fit as I am now, or as much energy, or explosive, but like I want to be out there. I want to be encouraging them. I want to be doing that. Yeah. I mean, that's what I feel like.
Oh, I love it.
I have called on my heart.
We went out rock climbing once with a bunch of our children. I forget who all was there, but again, ranging from 24 down to 10, and we were out there climbing, and there was this couple, and I struck up a conversation with for a minute, but they were in their 60s, they were in their mid 60s, and they kept climbing, they kept doing. They said, well, and they had gotten back into it in their early 60s. They had gotten back into rock climbing. They said, oh, we used to do it, like decades ago, and then we just decided, why did we give that up?
Yeah.
And we got back into it. He goes, we just can't climb as long or do as many climbs in a day, but we still love it, and it's just as much as we remember, and it was great being out there by them. They were so motivating. But I'm going to run through these ones real quick. What does the Bible say about stewarding health? Sometimes we just kind of say the Bible just doesn't have much to say about it, and I feel like we've given you some good ones to think about. But here's the hammer. I'm going to give you some hammer. So guys, reach down, grab a hold, get ready to take some body blows here, because these ones are going to hurt. 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20 says, your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. You are not your own. If you were bought with a price, so glorify God in your body. Your body is not disposable. It's sacred. Keeping it strong honors God. Yes, that also means keeping it from impurity. And that's what everyone always takes that to be, but it also means we need to keep our body in shape. God gave you this body. And if you have it in terrible condition where you have all kinds of health issues, you are not treating that like the temple of the Holy Spirit. Yeah. That is like taking your church. You just take your church guys and go ahead and knock out some windows, turn the pews over, okay? Just pee on the place. I'm serious. Do some gross stuff. Think about that. Yeah. That's what you're doing to your body, guys. Yeah. I said this one was going to be a body blow. It's a hard one. And I just feel like when we don't look at this one, we have to be men.
That's by choice. So if you're doing that by choice, you're eating bad food. You're not. And this is. I'm just going to hit it hard.
Just
guys.
not caring.
If you're not caring, you're fat, and you don't see the importance behind your physical health, and you're overweight. And then there are other people that don't have, like, they might be sick, but sometimes their health can actually have their eating or fitness could have affected that. But then some people, they were sick and they can't get around that. But still push yourself. I'm not saying push yourself so hard that you end up like burning yourself out. Yeah. But like push yourself.
That's right. And what we're saying is this could be your clarion call. Hey, time for me to wake up and do a little bit better. Maybe you can make your diabetes less of an issue in your life. Maybe you can make
it.
Yeah, you can diabetes it. That's right. So, I mean, any one of these things, we're not saying these aren't serious challenges and that you don't have real physical issues. We get it. But what can you be doing is what we're saying.
Proverbs 20 as a crutch. Don't use it as a crutch.
Yeah, don't use it as a crutch. And I like crutch or excuse. Don't use it as an excuse when you could be doing more. And you know it, fellas. You know it. If you faint, this is Proverbs 24:10, I'm sorry. If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. So you're weak. Yeah. I mean, that's what that just said. Yep. Bible just said you're weak. If you faint in the day of adversity, you're weak. Your strength is small. Weakness in hard times doesn't just reveal your physical condition at the time. It exposes what we were saying, drum roll, your preparation, guys, your training. What have you been doing? All it does is, hey, you came to the test and you fell short of the mark that you want to be at.
And if you fell short, do better next time.
That's right. Just get yourself up off the mat. You got knocked down. No big deal. 1 Timothy 4:8 says, for physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things. Now, when we say of some value, I just want you to know that it says some value. People try to say that sometimes it says of little value. Okay, well, even of little value. What we're saying is back then that they were even saying it when they were actually, everybody was fit compared to today's standards. When they walked everywhere and did all these things. They even said physical training was of little value.
And in the big scheme of things, yes, it's of little value if you're just focusing on that and not focusing on your spiritual health and you're a terrible husband, terrible, father, or a terrible friend, and you're like, kissing your biceps and it's all about you. Yes, little value to your soul.
That's right. Physical training matters. It's not the ultimate, but it is essential for overall health. That's what we're saying. Fear the Lord and shun evil. I'm sorry, this is Proverbs 3, 7, and 8. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. A spiritually aligned man is also physically well in many cases. So again, remember, we're saying these things are together. And when we're saying like this health, it's not just physical fitness. It's, again, we need to get those aspects of fitness together and aligned. And we're kind of starting to get close to the wrap up here, guys. But one thing that we want to talk about is, right before we move into the kind of the wrap up, is how do you know if you're leading on empty? And, that's what I phrased this one, leading on empty. Signs you're leading on empty. And that's really just from, the title of today's.
Yeah, I'll let Cal read that, and then I'll do the call to action at the end here.
Yeah. So the signs you're leading on empty. Okay, you're constantly exhausted, even with sleep. You rely on stimulants or sugar to push you through the day. So if you've got to pop a few 5-hour energies and drink constant coffee, you're leading on empty. You're mentally foggy, anxious, or short-tempered. And I especially want to say it to your loved ones. Okay, when you're getting short-tempered with your wife and your children, guys, you're running on empty, and you need to change some stuff. And again, you're irritable with your spouse, your kids, or your teammates. You've stopped training, reading, or growing spiritually. Okay, so you've stopped physically training, you've stopped reading and developing mentally and growing some, and you're no longer reading your Bible. You're not praying. You're not attacking things spiritually. And again, those non-Christian people, there's lots of great books out there on mental disciplines and spiritual disciplines that aren't necessarily tied to the Bible. We just think that's the best way here. So men don't burn out because they're doing too much. They tend to burn out because they're not being fueled properly. Okay, so it's not necessarily you're doing too much. And it can be. They don't tend to burn out.
And or lack of purpose or unrealistic expectations of their purpose.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I know my I definitely feel like I have a grasp on my purpose, but I've been guilty of unrealistic expectations of the goals and the purpose, like to achieve the purpose, right?
Yeah.
So I'll burn out because I just have a really unrealistic expectation. I'll just do so much and boom, done, burn out. But if you know what it takes to get there and you know what your purpose is, you won't get burned out.
Yeah, so Arden's going to read you the takeaways here in just a second. I'm going to give you the how to reclaim your honor through health. So there's just 5 quick bullet points, and then he's going to say what the takeaways are from everything we just talked about here today. So first, and I know we talked a little bit about some of these things, but I'm going to put them all together for you. Get back to the basics. You got to prioritize your protein. Okay, as guys, we have got to prioritize our protein. Yeah, it costs just a little bit more, but it's not that much. Again, if you get to eating healthier food, it does not cost that much to prioritize your protein. You're spending your money on food. Trust me, you've got the money for protein if you look for it. So prioritize your protein. Make sure you're getting the right sleep. Make sure you're getting hydrated. Get the right movement, and make sure you're praying. Okay, use our tools. Guys, we got Peak Performance Whey, collagen, we got WOD recovery stuff, all these things that you can use to refuel after your physical work. That isn't just when you work out, that's physical work. Some of you guys, carpenters, roofers, whatnot. Yeah. You got to make sure you're moving daily. This is point number 2. You got to move daily, guys. It doesn't have to be heavy lifting every day. Walk, stretch, move with purpose just while you're going through your day. 3, cut the junk. Not just junk food, ultra-processed foods. Cut out the seed oils, the sugar bombs, the alcohol, the late night scrolling, things that sap your strength and your spirit, and don't strengthen them. They sap your strength. Own your sleep. That's number 4, right? Own your sleep. Go to bed at a consistent time. You're not leading well if you're sleep deprived. And there's a gazillion battlefield studies that prove that over time. Being sleep deprived is just like being drunk or under the influence of some other drug. You don't want to get yourself in a sleep deprived state. And then 5, the 5th aspect is train for real life leadership. Physical fitness should also be viewed as a spiritual discipline. Physical fitness requires mental fitness. Physical, mental, and spiritual fitness is the only proven way that can prepare, that's to train and harden you. So you prepare you through training and hardening for the unknown and the unknowable that life will throw at you. We will not be able to perform the really tough spiritual tasks if our minds and our bodies are physically weak.
So important, very important. All right, so I'm going to go and I'm going to read a couple takeaways here. You were not made to survive. You were made to thrive. You were made to lead, and thriving in leadership demands honor, the kind of honor that starts with how you treat your body, mind, and spirit. Number 2, a sick, weak, or burned out man is not a bad man, but he is also not ready. He is not a ready man. He is not ready for what life will bring. Undefeated men don't wait for life to make them ready. We train for it.
Yes. I think that's probably a lot of us fall in that category. Yeah. And there's some aspect that you might. So remember, this is those different aspects: physically, mentally, spiritually, relationally. Am I ready?
Well, and let's not try to respond, but let's prepare.
Let's prepare.
Prepare. So here's the third one. Start small. One workout at a time. One workout. One early night. One smart meal. That's where the comeback begins, guys. One day, 1% better. String the victories together until you reach your goals. Get yourself in shape. Yeah. Small wins build momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence leads to consistency, and consistent men become undefeated.
That's right.
And man, this is a good podcast. This is a great podcast. So I'll just I'll start with just call to action here, guys. If today's podcast stirred something in you, don't just sit on it. Honor your health like it matters, because it does. A strong, healthy man leads well, loves well, and lasts a long time. Visit just our store site, or we got a coaching program coming out, so you probably get our newsletter if you haven't signed up for it, so we can get that coaching program stuff put together for you to help take these next steps. Now, our coaching program has not launched yet, but we're launching it very soon. Mm-hmm. Very soon. So hopefully after this podcast, it's only just a couple of more weeks until we've got our coaching program. And regardless, I mean, don't wait for us. Don't wait for other people. I want to be able to coach you, but don't wait for us. Yeah. All right. Good man's never stuck, guys.
A good man's never stuck.